Thank you very much, Kevin. Good morning, everybody. I'm so pleased that we're all here in person, and I'm glad that I finally made it to Farnborough, this famous air show in the climactic weeks of my time as Prime Minister. Fantastic, of course, to be here at Farnborough. Scene of one of many of the most exciting developments in the history of powered flight. It was here that the de Havilland Comet ushered in the jet age. Here that the world first saw the Vulcan bomber, which I remember, beautiful machine I remember from my childhood. And here that spectators first saw the amazing aeronautical ability of the Typhoon, which I experienced for myself last Thursday. With the help of Wing Commander Paul Hansen, I took off from RAF Coningsby straight up like a vertical firecracker. We slipped the surly bonds of earth, as the poet McGee puts it, and danced the skies on laughter-silvered wings. We flung that eager craft through footless halls of air, and we generally put it through its paces, I can tell you. And after a while, the wing commander said to me, "Do you want to have a go?" And I said, "Are you sure? It seems very expensive to me. We only have, Mike, I think we only have 148 of them, and they cost £75 million a pop." And he said, "Don't worry, you can't break it." And I thought, oh well, famous last words. And so I pushed the joystick right over to the right, and we did an aileron roll, and then I hauled the joystick right back, and we did a fantastic loop-the-loop. And then I did a more complicated thing called a barrel roll, which I pushed the stick up and right a bit. I think that was the right thing to do. And anyway, we started to pull a few G's, as they say, and quite a few G's. When I came back to consciousness, I could see the sea getting closer and closer. And I started to dream about this incredible forest of wind farms I could see all over the North Sea. And I thought about the way we were, this government, in the last few years, we've been reclaiming Doggerland, the ancient harvesting, the drowned prairies of the North Sea, if you remember, harvesting them once again with gigawatt after gigawatt of clean, green energy, helping to deliver a long-term sustainable solution to our energy needs, ending any dependence on Putin whatsoever. Anyway, this reverie must have gone on for quite a while, because my colleague said, "I'm taking back control now." And we headed happily home. And I was absolutely stunned by the Typhoon, because it is actually now more than 25 years since I first flew a fast jet. Because I went out, thanks to the RAF, I went out to Seymour Johnson Air Force Base in North Carolina, and I flew an F-15E Strike Eagle. And I remember sitting in that cockpit and looking at wires running either side of me that were actually attached to pedals at the pilot's feet, and they were pulling the flaps. And I looked at that and I thought, this really isn't so different from a Sopwith Camel. And on Thursday last week at Coningsby, I asked them afterwards, what would, as you ask about what would happen in a fight between a Tyrannosaurus Rex and a killer whale, I said, what would happen in a fight between a Typhoon and an F-15E Strike Eagle? And they said it would be no contest. Almost 30 years ago, when I went up in an F-15E, the Strike Eagle seemed to me to be the last word in strength and power and aggression. But compared to a Typhoon, according to the RAF, it would be so motionless and defenseless that a dogfight, in the brutal words of one Typhoon pilot, would be like clubbing seals. And that's what he said. I mean, he gulped a bit when he said it, but that's what he said. And so the lesson I draw is about the scale and the pace of technological change. It was only 85 years ago that my grandfather was flying Wellington bombers with equipment so primitive that you really have to marvel at the bravery of the men and women who were involved in that war. In fact, he used up quite a few Wellington bombers. He crashed twice, the second time into a church I'm afraid he was always prone to religious doubts. But I marvel at the bravery of that generation. But let's face it, it was only 120 years ago that this whole enterprise began of heavier-than-air powered flight in machines barely more than a century ago that looked like laundry baskets lashed together with leather and canvas and propelled by lawnmower engines. And if you think that we've gone from a laundry basket to a Typhoon in a century, then I just want you to imagine what the next 20 years and the next 50 years will bring. And I want you to know, with this concluding thought, I want you to know that this government believes in British aviation and British technological genius and its power to bring jobs and growth across our whole country, uniting and levelling up across the whole country, as it does. And that's why we're investing so massively in defence, the biggest uplift since the end of the Cold War, and that's why I'm so obsessed with the Future Combat Aircraft System, with Team Tempest and everything that involves. I think it is a fantastic project. There are already 560 UK companies playing their part, more than 1,000 apprentices and new graduates involved. And I am a passionate believer in the potential of our burgeoning partnership, not just with Italy, but with Japan. An incredible thing to be doing now, 80 years after the end of the Second World War. And of course, the Future Combat Aircraft System is not just a plane. It is a whole platform for technological change and industrial spin-offs of all kinds, because the combat aircraft systems of the future will be very different even from the Typhoon. And some of them will be manned, some of them will be crewed, and some of them won't be. And in developing these new technologies and in maintaining the air superiority that we have luxuriated in, let's be frank, for so long, but which is so crucial for our long-term security, I want our country to be in the lead. And then on this scorching day, with the thermometer about to blow and temperatures here apparently higher than the Sahara, there is the next great technological challenge, which is how to, as Kevin was just saying, how to send a plane across the Atlantic without burning thousands of tons of kerosene and adding to the carbon tea cozy that is heating our planet to destruction. We know that we must fix it. We know that time is running out, and that's why one of the first things I initiated 3 years ago was a project called Jet Zero, in which I think many of you are participating, and thanks very much for what you are doing, a zero-carbon plane. People think it's impossible. They say pigs might fly. Well, let me tell you, this is not only the country that built the first jet engine, the first plane across the Atlantic. In 1909, a pilot by the name of John Theodore Cuthbert Moore Brabazon took off with a 6-week-old piglet in a waste paper basket, tied to the strut of a Short Brothers biplane. We showed that pigs could fly 100 years ago in this country. And we are going to fix zero-carbon aviation as well, not just because it's right for our planet, but because it will drive jobs and growth around the country. And that's why today we are investing a further £250 million in UK aviation technology and in innovation. And so, look, in conclusion, I want you to know that after 3 happy years in the cockpit, and after performing some pretty difficult, if not astonishing, feats, getting Brexit done, restoring this country's ability to make its own laws in Parliament, vaccinating, have I told you this before? Never mind. Vaccinating our population faster than any other comparable country and ensuring the fastest growth in the G7, and, as Kevin rightly reminded us, being the first European country to give the Ukrainians the vital military help they need to see off Putin's aggression, not to mention cutting neighbourhood crime by 31%, lowest unemployment for 50 years, gigabit broadband penetration rising from 7 to 69% of households in this country, and many, many other statistics, which I assure you I will keep regaling the population. I am now going to hand over the controls seamlessly to someone else. Don't know who, but whoever it is, I can tell you this, I can reassure you of this, that the twin engines, the great Rolls-Royce twin engines of this Conservative government will roar on. Fantastic public services, a dynamic free market economy, each boosting the other and developing, what's the word I want, millions of tons of thrust. And there could be no better example of that relationship and that symbiosis than between government and the private sector than the aviation industry. And if you want a final example of the government's ambition, I give you not just FCAS, not just Jet Zero, but spaceflight as well. And this year, if all goes well, we will launch the first UK satellite in history to enter space from UK soil, as Newquay becomes this country's equivalent of Cape Kennedy, shortly to be followed by Shetland as well. And look, folks, I leave it to you to imagine who at this stage I would like to send into orbit. I think perhaps a volunteer can be found from the green benches of Parliament. But for now, I leave that entirely to you and to your speculation. But for now, with so much to look forward to in this incredible sector, and with the UK at the leading edge of progress, not just for our national security and the security of our friends and neighbours, not just for our economic prosperity around the whole country, but for the protection of the planet itself, I declare this great Farnborough Airshow open. Thank you all very much. Thank you. Thank you.